if we could have negative mass would make this whole bigger. كيب ثورن العالم اللي كان بيراجع عشان يخلي انترستيلر فيلم بقى مظبوط ودقيق علميا، كان احد البروبوزيشنز، احد الحاجات اللي اخترعها للورم هول، اللي هو اللي يخليك تقدر تختصر مسافات عبر الزمن او عبر الوقت. هو الاثنين بيبقوا حاجه واحده الزمكان، يعني عبر الزمكان، هو ان يبقى في particles that have negative mass، حاجه عندها كتله بالسالب، فتقدر تخلي هذا الورم هول مفتوح. سوري.
Thank you, Ahmed. And many other discoveries. I mean, today people are looking at, time travel, but literally moving one object from one place to the other instantaneously. And there's a lot of research happening around the world in transportation to make sure that that is possible. Again, you think about it as a very, very hard to achieve, let's say, theory, but eventually it will happen. This is how we made discoveries as humans. And many other topics. I mean, looking at the way I define it, there are some scientific discoveries, and there are some engineering discovery. That's totally different. That's really using what we have today, making it perfect in a way that we can actually benefit and transform the way we live. Like, these phones today, you can do anything in them. And that happens because we understood how semiconductors work, and we came up with even better and better and better, because that's what we do as humans. And I think these will revolutionize the way we live eventually.
Ahmed, you talked a little bit about this, but what upcoming technologies, discoveries are you most looking forward to?
So personally, I'm very, very excited about brain-machine interface. I'm going to be a little controversial here, but I don't like our bodies. In a sense, of course, I think they're marvelous, they're beautiful, they're wonderful, they can do like very amazing stuff, but they have a lot of diseases. And if you can just manage to cancel out the bodies, you delete the diseases. So why spend billions of dollars trying to treat lung cancer when you can just remove the lungs? Because again, all what you need in the brain is actually basically oxygenated blood and glucose. And basically you can do that. The only thing you'd probably work on mobility and sensation, and maybe I think the development that's basically happening in robotics would actually push us forward. But managing to have a system that makes the brain able to communicate with a robot, I am looking very much for that. Bodies are amazing, again, wonderful, magnificent. I love them, but I think they're just very much past their time. But we can have definitely better bodies that can be easily fixable. Again, I love our bodies. I think they're good. I'm lucky to have a functioning one. Thank you. يعني انا الاقتراح اللي بقوله اكتر حاجه متحمس لها حاجه اسمها البرين ماشين انترفيس، ان المخ يقدر يتواصل مع الاله، لانه احنا اجسامنا فيها امراض، فيها حاجات، فانت ليه تعالج سرطان الرئه بدل ما انت ممكن تشيل الرئه؟ في الاخر المخ محتاج اوكسجينيتد بلاد، دم فيه اكسجين وجلوكوز، وفي الاخر حاجتين اللي هنحتاج نشتغل عليهم في مجال الروبوتات ومجال السنسيشن، اللمس او كده. واظن ده حاجه زي كده بتحصل بحيث ان هي تقدر تبدل اجسادنا.
I'll sugarcoat a little bit what you said. Let's say sometimes some disabilities in humans can benefit from these kind of technologies. I mean, some people who cannot walk, now you can have a system, a robotic system that can help them.
But gentlemen, don't you think this can also be achieved through gene editing, understanding the genome better?
The body is super complicated. Yes, طبعا there is a lot of interesting things happening in terms of gene and gene editing. When the Human Genome Project started in 2003, we had all these marvelous dreams about we'd find the gene for cancer, we'd find the gene for Alzheimer's, but it turns out like our genetics are very, very complicated, very, very hard to maneuver and take. And so, like, yeah, again, this is very important. It's wonderful. Having improvements in medicine would help us a lot. But again, if we could just make a body that we understand and we can fix and we have our engineers, that's my assumption. I don't know if that's true. هو كان سؤاله عن انه استخدام الجين اديتنج والتغييرات والحاجات اللي بتحصل في مجال الطب ممكن تعمل حاجه زي كده، فانا كان رايي يعني ان هو الموضوع ادعي ان هو معقد او على مستوى الجينات وعلى مستوى التدخل الطبي، لان هو الجسم بتاعنا مارفلس، ممتع، رهيب، جبار. وبيشتغل بشكل complicated قوي، احنا كبشريه يمكن اصعب ان احنا نتعامل معاه على عكس لو كان روبوت. ده ادعاء.
And what, maybe going, just building on this, we talked about the future going forward, but what do you think some of the previous discoveries, inventions can help us get there? So existing technologies that have transformed how we think and will enable that future. What do you think some of the existing technologies that will get us there are?
Today we are already living in a totally different world that not even a generation before, even us in the same generation, 20 years ago, I mean, we were living totally different life. So I think the way forward today, looking at some key technologies, I think cloud computing. I mean, everything, you don't need anything now. You don't need to save anything. You are always connected with everything. I think this Internet of Things, cloud computing, having all the information saved somewhere, yes, definitely, but you have the direct connectivity to it. It makes a lot of our life much easier, and eventually it will be a big enabler to how we will deal with things in the future. That's when it comes to some, let's say, semiconductors or technology or storage. When we look at the Hyperloop and the transportation, I think that's also a big change in life. Eventually, you know, today, if you want to go to Mars, you will need 8 months. And that's how long it takes. And we are doing a lot of studies just to make sure a human being can survive living in a closed capsule and flying in total emptiness for 8 months, and then he will arrive to Mars. And then he will have to think nobody's there. So psychologically, it's a big challenge. So having solutions that will take us faster there, that will really make us maybe go to another galaxy. I don't know. You know that, you know, the Star Wars and these what we believe now are more fictional could be eventually actually facts. Nevertheless, I do think the way we go in our life, maybe that's a side topic, but that's something we really have to be careful about, is how we are dealing with resources on Earth. You know, in the next 50 years, the nature on Earth will be totally different, and so many things will have to, I mean, we will have to deal with them, our children have to deal with them. So we really have to be careful on the way we live on Earth. You know, recently the announcement on usage of, or stopping the usage of plastics and so on. I think these are really key decisions we have to make. Yes, we have to innovate for the future. We have to come up with advancement in technologies, but we really have to be careful how we live here on Earth and using our resources. You know, some research is happening on taking resources from space, you know. There is so much investment today on sending, I don't know, a big container to space, collecting some huge gold from some, let's say, flying asteroid, and then bringing it back to Earth. It's possible. So many resources outside our planet, but eventually we have to also, I think, care about resources here on Earth.
So as we discover new things, also take care of the planet Earth, which gives us all the resources to be able to achieve such discoveries. Ahmed, what would you say some of the existing technologies today are the most transformative in helping us get to a future where you talked about time travel and all these things?
Well, definitely, of course, a lot of ideas regarding the internet, computer, all of that is going wonderful. Again, with the brain-machine interface, you need to have a good development of a system that's able to document every neuron and what is it basically saying, and so transforming that into a language that a computer could understand, and therefore having a robot. But I also want to speak about something that I find very interesting, is that sometimes there's a very famous battle in science, and that's basically exploration versus exploitation. So basically, exploration is that sometimes, like, you just search randomly. For example, there's a branch in mathematics called number theory, and basically they find laws regarding numbers. They find to manage patterns and develop theorems regarding numbers. It was completely useless up until maybe the 19th or the 20th century, where we started developing, in computer science, cryptography. And where would we go look? We'd look at number theory, how to make, a kind of passwords or, mechanism that can, identify passwords or whatever. Not my field, so I don't understand. So again, sometimes you have discoveries or you work in things that you come to discover their importance way, way late in life. And as we speak about electricity, there's a very interesting, so I think, I'm not sure, I think it's James Clerk Maxwell, when, someone from I think a politician asked him when, he brought up electricity, and he asked him, what's the use of electricity? Now, we take it for granted. We love it. Absolutely wonderful. But he said, what's the use of a little child? Yeah, it's a child now. It doesn't do a lot of functions, doesn't do a job, doesn't, improve the economy. But again, you'd expect it to grow and do a lot of things. And again, one of our most brilliant inventions, I think, is the scientific method. It's a philosophy. It's not something technical. So you could have that. You could have an interesting philosophical way of treating evidence, communicating between things. These are very underrated things. Technology is brilliant, wonderful. You do an engineering of a computer. But again, sometimes there's a communication technology in which people have a protocol, for example, where they can communicate with each other better. انا يعني طبعا رايي انه الكمبيوتر مجال الانترنت مجال فيه امبروفمنتس كبيره وفرص كبيره ان احنا بنقدر نتواصل مع بعضنا بالشكل ده وان احنا نقدر ناخد من المخ على الروبوت او كده. ولكن اللي فعلا مهم بالنسبه لي واللي انا شايفه ممكن يبقى انترستنج اكتر هو انه احيانا في اكتشافات موجوده دلوقتي ولكن احنا ما نعرفش اهميتها. ده حصل في الرياضيات. كان عندنا فرع في الرياضيات اسمه نمبر ثيري. هم بيزيكلي بيدوروا على الباترنز، البرايم نمبرز، تحركهم هل هيفضل مستمر الى ما لا نهايه ولا لا، الجول باخ كونجكشر، كل هذا الكلام. ده اكتشفنا اهميته مش لما طلع في القرن ما اعرفش 16 ولا 15، ولكن لما عملنا كريبتوغرافي ابتدينا ندور على طريقه عشان نفك بيها شفرات وبالتالي رجعنا. كذلك حاجه ممكن تبقى حاجه فلسفيه زي مثلا فكره الساينتفك ميثود، الطريقه اللي بنتعامل بيها على الادله، فكره البير ريفيو، دي كلها افكار ما عملناهاش في معمل، دي افكار فلسفيه قدرنا نطورها وبس كده. شكرا.
I think يعني just linking it to what Amer said earlier, and there's the science and then there's the application. Sometimes you come up with the science but there's no application for it, and once the application comes in it takes off. But there's also this commercial side to science, and we pick and choose, or when the timing is right, sometimes a particular theory might take off. For this next part of the session, I'm going to ask you more targeted questions about your own experiences and career. So Mohammed, Amer, you've been working at the space agency for most of your career. If you can tell me, we were talking back in the green room about what having such a big, ambitious goal does to a generation. I mean, you see the audience here, most of them are young people, students, college-age kids. What, in your experience, has the UAE's Mars mission, space agency plans done and provided to all this youth? And what is the importance of setting the next big target, the next big, so we did Mars and now Venus and so on, and you talked a little bit earlier about what about getting to the next galaxy? What is the importance of having grand objectives to inspire youth?
I think the evidence is here today. I'm really happy to see not only very young kids, I mean even adults, all generations here. I think it has a big impact. I think that's the reality we live in. I see it even in my kids. I mean, they really enjoy what I do. I don't know. They feel excited when I come home. What did you do, guys? And then they are interacting with me with a lot of things. And I think on different levels, having in any nation an ambitious goal, and I think this is proven in many countries and in many generations. You know, back in the 60s when the US decided to go and land on the moon, it had a huge impact, not only on the people, the industries, the political system there, and it was all towards let's make a man land on the moon within a decade. And they did it. And then again with other achievements by other nations, in Russia, in other nations. Today in the UAE it happened, and we've seen it. I remember back in the days, it was very difficult to convince someone, come and work with us. Today it's very difficult to tell someone, we don't have a space or a place for you. we don't have enough, let's say, for example, seats. So it's impressive, and this is why it's good to have you know, us, Mohammed Bin Rashid Space Center, UAE Space Agency, so much work is happening in the academy, in the universities, space centers, and then other companies like Yasat in the UAE. And then we saw the overflow of this go beyond the UAE. You know, different countries call for us to support them in their space program. Today, as Arabs living in this region, we have a lot of, let's say, stressful impact on us. If you open the TV, I don't know if anybody opens the TV today, but if you go on your phone and then you see your Instagram or Twitter, you see a lot of bad news, and you feel connected to them. But today, when you see these achievements, when you see excitement, when you see the different generations interact with you about science, about achievements, about going to space, this is really the what brings us back to where we feel we should be. We as Arabs, as Muslims, we should be in the frontier of scientific discoveries and generation of knowledge. And, you know, we don't say this. Even all the scientists around the world say, most of the stars are named in Arabic. We have to go back to this kind of, let's say, environment where all the generations live in a more stable life, but can give back to the world what we are really used to.
Well said. I think there's something important about us going back to creating knowledge, not just consuming and utilizing knowledge, but creating knowledge and sharing it with the world. I think, Ahmed, you had an interjection here.
No, yeah, so I absolutely, I agree on what you say. And sometimes we take technology for granted. So in an interview with Elon Musk, he was basically saying that no, technology won't continue on improving. For example, the Egyptians lost the knowledge of making a pyramid for thousands of years. So you'd imagine like building a pyramid, you'd want to improve on a bigger pyramid, much bigger pyramid, I don't know, better technology. But it happens that societies make knowledge or make technologies, and if they don't invest enough into making them, you lose the technology.
Or preserving it even.
Yes, not even preserving it. We even lost our language, and we stayed for years in Egypt till we got back to understand our language and therefore understand our history. So again, you'd find that a lot happening in history, also the Romans. So yeah, we take it for granted, and unless we put a lot of investment into preserving this technologies and preserving the pathway from generation to generation, this technology, this is the only way we'll be able to keep these technologies. احنا عادة بناخد التكنولوجيا بشكل ان هي دايما هتفضل مستمرة، دايما هتفضل كويسة، دايما هتفضل تتقدم، ولكن بتشوف في تاريخ الشعوب انه بعض الشعوب لآلاف السنين فقدت لغتها. الهيروغليفية مثلا احنا فقدناها لفترة كبيرة. بناء الأهرامات ما عدناش كحضارة تبني في الآلاف السنين اللي فاتت دي نفضل نبني أهرامات ونكبر ونعمل تكنولوجيا أحدث. بيحصل انه المجتمعات ممكن تفقد معرفتها بالتكنولوجيا وكده، وتحتاج ان هي مع الوقت تباصي المعرفه دي للاجيال اللي بعد كده. فعشان كده مهم جدا الاستثمار في العلوم، ومهم جدا الاستثمار والادراك ان هي لو سبناها مش هتكمل لوحدها، لا محتاجه مجهود وجهد
Ahmed, my next question is about your career utilizing social media to promote science. It's very common. I have a nephew who's in high school, and every time I ask him, what do you want to be? What do you want to study? He always tells me, I want to be a famous YouTuber. I think that's very common. And my response to him is usually, it's okay to be famous, but what do you want to be famous for? I think you're a good role model for being famous for something that you're passionate about. You're famous. All of these people are here to see you because you're talking about science and making it accessible, and it's genuine. It's something that you care about, and I think the audience senses that. Can you tell us a little bit about how do you utilize, whether it's social media or any other platform, to be able to, make a name for yourself, make a legacy for yourself, but also something that you are truly passionate about and truly something that is meaningful and can leave a legacy behind?
هو I was very lucky إنه I was really interested in that stuff. أنا بحب الحاجات دي جدا. when I read about these propositions and theories, I found myself very, very excited, and I was lucky enough to have, privileges of having a good education, privileges of having to understand different languages. All these, not something I work hard for. I was born somehow to be in these privileges without my choice. So I found myself interested in that kind of stuff. And by some research, it happened that I got into the YouTube field. But again, I think like, not everyone has to be interested in science. Not everyone has to pursue science. We need, as a society, to work in different fields. As I said, I would believe the most interesting and the most important discovery in science is actually in philosophy, the scientific method. Karl Popper falsification theory. All that did not come from science. So, yeah, I've lost my my train of thought.
But what do you say? What do you say to youth who are interested in becoming famous, who are interested to be well known and recognized? Is there value enough in just being famous, or is there value in being famous for something that you're passionate about? How do you strike that balance?
Of course, that's very hard. But yeah, again, being famous alone is not something I would advise everyone to be for. There are a lot of drawbacks. Again, we've seen a lot of influencers being bullied and a lot of things happening in ways that we don't want. Again, I'm not blaming the influencer or the society for it. I'm not into that debate. But again, yeah, being famous just for the sake of it is not good, apparently. But definitely, yeah, if anyone is going to pursue doing YouTube or doing the things that has a side thing of being famous, I would definitely advise for sustainability. Always keep on posting and always keep on learning in whatever field. If you want to do gaming, if you want to do football. انا بصراحه ما عنديش راي قوي في هذا الموضوع، ولكن الشهره لحد ذاتها مش حاجه ادعي ان هي كويسه، لانه احنا بنشوف انفلونسرز كتير بيتعرضوا لضغط نفسي وديبريشن وانكزايتي وكل هذا الكلام نتيجه من البولينج، فليها مخاطرها وليها عيوبها يعني. ولكن نصيحتي لاي حد عايز يبرسو او عايز يكمل في هذا المجال هو الاستمراريه، دايما بوست باستمرار، لان الالجوريثم هو ده بقى السيد بتاع عالم اليوتيوب وعالم التيك توك وهذه العوالم. هو الاستمرار، تفضل شغال وبس، ودايما تبحث، ودايما حتى لو كان فيلدز مختلفه، مجال الجيمنج تشوف الناس بره بتعمل ايه، مجال الكوره تشوف برضو تقدر توصل لفين يعني. بس
This is actually a very nice segue.
بضيف بس دكتور احمد. I have to be honest with you, Ahmed. Today, you know, generations and maybe thousands of years ago, the way knowledge is transferred from, let's say, a professor or a doctor or someone very knowledgeable to a different person, it was changing as time goes by. From كتاتيب, even before that, it was حلقات علم. But today, social media is the biggest influencer on our kids, in our life. You know, even if you spend 7 hours in a school or university, you still have 7 hours before you go to sleep.
A great majority of the news we have is from Facebook and Twitter.
Definitely.
خلاص نيويورك تايمز اختفى، أو يعني أي الصحف أغلبها اختفى. فيا true.
I think having influencers who focus on STEM is really important in our region. And
definitely very, very important.
Very, very.
And so, starting today, I will open my YouTube with you.
I think this is a very nice segue to my next question. You talked about your evolution and learning and finding yourself and the career path you took. Amer, a similar question. What has been the biggest learning lessons for the agency as a whole, working as a lead, but also on a personal level? Working on these cutting-edge projects, what has been some of the biggest learning lessons? And it could be, like I said, scientifically based, and it could be personal. What have you learned that you want to share with others?
Well, one thing is there is no quick wins. I don't think anybody, I mean, sometimes when you look at a profile or you go through a movie of, let's say, a famous person, how he became famous, you look at it for maybe 1 hour, 40 minutes, I don't know, documentary. But that's not how long it takes for you to achieve something. The way we see it, I mean, we started back in 2005, and then we launched the UAE's first satellite in 2018. It took us 13 years to be able to build a fully satellite here in the UAE. And it requires dedication, it requires focus. Sometimes you start with something, after 1 or 2 days you say, I don't want to do it again. Sometimes after 1 year you say, I don't want to do it. I think focus and dedication, it's really important for you to achieve the success. It doesn't have to come in 1 day. It doesn't have to come in 1 year. But believing, I think believing will drive you to achieve this goal. And this is how it actually happened here in the UAE for the space sector specifically. I'm going to say about this. It took us years and a lot of focus to make sure we achieve what we have achieved. And we will continue, inshallah, as we go.
Inshallah. Ahmed, similar question. I mean, you strike me as a generalist who has so many different interests. I know that you branch out into audiobooks from since your show on YouTube. What would you say is the perfect balance from getting having a wider scope, يعني breadth versus depth, and what do you think science will always be at the core of your interests as your career going forward, or do you enjoy exploring new, let's say, ventures and things like that?
Okay, so I definitely believe that this is a division of so yeah, we need the experts who are very, very good at their doing what they're doing, producing the science and making the science available, and we need the journalists who basically transfer this knowledge into a much more accessible, to a much more accessible language to the public. Currently, I'm in the phase of doing the journalistic part. I like it very much. It gives me, I feel like a butterfly that flies over things without getting into the messy technical details. But I believe maybe that's for some time. Hopefully, like when I'm done with the Dahih journey, I don't know when it's going to happen. I believe I won't ever, but like even if there's absolutely, because I love it. I love speaking to people about science. I'm very excited about the things I read, and I love telling people about that. But yeah, of course, later on, I did my master's already in Hong Kong. Maybe I'll pursue my PhD later on in life. هي انا مؤمن ان هو في يعني الناحيتين، هو في الناحيه اللي بتطلع العلم، بتطلع المعرفه، وفي ناحيه بتعمل اركايفنج للمعرفه، بتارشف المعرفه وبتشعبنها. انا حاليا في هذا السيكتور. انا ادعي ان انا هفضل في هذا السيكتور طول حياتي. انا بحبه جدا وبعشقه، وبحب اتكلم عموما مع اي حد له علاقه او له انترست في هذا المجال. ولكن بعد كده في المستقبل ممكن فعلا ابتدي اخد خطوات مثلا توردز دكتوراه، وابتدي بقى اتخصص في حاجه معينه. ممكن يبقى التخصص في الكوميونيكيشن، في ديجري في امبيريال كولج لندن اسمها ساينس ميديا برودكشن، فده ما يتعلق بالانتاج العلمي، فتعمل بقى حاجات على البي بي سي، تعمل دوكيومنتريز على نتفليكس. يو كان جيت ا ديجري من ده. في يو سي ال ديجري ان ساينس كوميونيكيشن، فانت ممكن يبقى عندك دكتوراه وتخصص في الكوميونيكيشن. في طبعا دكتوراه في الاديوكيشن، في التعليم. بس اتمنى اكون جاوبت على سؤالك عشان انا بسرح.
وبالعكس انت when you divert من السؤال you give me a good segue to my next question. So my last question to the gentleman, my guests, and then I'll open the floor to the audience. If you have a question, please form it in your mind. My friends over there in the corner after this last question will get the mic across. But my last question, we can't be at the book fair without asking you about books. So I'll ask each one of you to tell me about a book that has been impactful in your life and why you like it, why it has changed the way you think, the way you do things. So we'll start with you, Amer, and we'll go to Ahmed.
Start with Ahmed.
Okay, we'll start with Ahmed. A book that has influenced you, changed your mind, or just a book that you really, really enjoy, and why?
That's a very hard question because, again, I fly over things, and usually, like every field, I get to find something interesting. So the most recent book, the most amazing recent book I've read is called The Noonday Demon. It basically discusses Noonday Demon, Shaitan al-Zahira. It basically discusses depression. Again, I think it's one of the most magnificent works regarding depression. It's very hard, it's very long, but again, I found it wonderful. I think if the editor would have done his job right, it would have been a little shorter, but absolutely magnificent. Of course, there are things that I started with in my high school years, زي مثلا Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I know some people would judge that very hardly, but again, to a teenager, that was amazing because we are always brought up thinking you need to have like an engineer or pursue medicine. You need to have a job. This was the first time a guy said, like, you should be pursuing passive income. the income you generate without working. So you invest in, for example, dividend stocks. You invest in companies where it returns a return every month or every quarter or whatever. Or you can buy an apartment that keeps on bringing rent. That was, to me, amazing. Like, that's something everyone actually should pursue, having a good retirement. So yeah, this is some of the books that I have in mind. My most favorite book of all time is The Gene. My favorite writer is Siddhartha Mukherjee. I think absolutely the best. He has 2 books, and I think maybe he's planning for one recently. The Gene, تاريخ الجينات, و The Emperor of All Maladies, إمبراطور الأمراض. انا تاني اللي كنت بتكلم فيه انه انا جنرالي يعني بحلق فوق المجالات، فكل شويه بلاقي مجال بيعجبني من كاتب كويس. فواحد من الحاجات دي كان مثلا كتاب اسمه ذا نون داي ديمون، شيطان الظهيره، كان بيتكلم على مرض الاكتئاب. طبعا هو عنده قصه مبهره، وعنده جايب تاريخ مبهر، وجايب ابحاث علميه مبهره، ومستضيف شعراء ومش شغل عظيم. لكن من اكتر الحاجات اللي فعلا غيرت في مفهومي كتاب لواحد اسمه روبرت كايوساكي، بيتكلم على اسمه ريتش داد بور داد فور تينز. هو تاني روبرت كايوساكي ممكن ناس تجادجه جامد وتقول ده اي كلام، بس بالنسبه لي كمراهق الفكره اللي طرحها كانت فكره مبهره، فكره الباسيف انكم، فكره ان انت تبقى قاعد في مكانك كده وبيخش لك فلوس، طبعا بعد ما تشتغل، مش عشان ما حدش بس يضحك على الناس ويقول لها اللي هو لا هجيب لك شغلانه وانت قاعد، لا انت هتشتغل وتحصل فلوس وبعد كده تستثمر الفلوس دي بحيث ان يجي لك عائد بشكل. ده بالنسبه لي كانت فكره ثوريه. وبس كده، شكرا.
I think you mentioned something really key. I was discussing this with some of my students yesterday. The same book, Rich Dad Poor Dad. It's not only the book, but when I read it. For example, I read that book right before I made my first paycheck, right before I got my first job. So it's not just the book, it's just the timing of the book in my life and where I was at that made it so impactful, and that makes my list as well. Amer, your favorite book or a book that has changed the way you think and why?
Wallah, Doctor, I will disappoint you. I'm not much of a book reader. I have been reading one book for maybe 8 years now. I don't know. But I keep going back and forth. But it's a big book. It's called Al-Bidaya wa Nihaya. It's a historical book. I like history. I like to read about history. So that book, I've been reading it for so many years now. I go back on and off with it. But what I enjoy most is listening to my wife, who reads a lot, and keeps telling me what I want. A summary of every book. I don't know if she's here, but she's really an inspiration for me when it comes to book. So she reads a lot of books about like novels, Dostoevsky and Kafka and so on, and she gives me a very, very, very good summary of how the characters in these books are really good. So I enjoy these kind of books, the novels. I think that the change in novels in the history from back in the early 90s, even before that, to today's novels. She's been telling me about one. I think he's an American, but an Afghan writer.
Yeah.
Who's
Hussein,
yes.
Something. Yes. Kite runner.
Yes,
Kite runner.
the Kite
Yeah.
Runner. Yes, I saw the movie also later on, but she told me you have wasted your time watching the movie. The book is even much better.
I agree.
And now she's reading a book about Who Controls the World by Noam Chomsky, and I like sitting 30 minutes just listening to what she have discovered from this book. So I learn from what she learns. So I thank my wife for that, and hopefully I will eventually finish Bidaya wa Nihaya.
I have to point out that Amer's family is somewhere around here, for that was a very strategic answer. Well done. All right, so now the time you've been waiting for. We'll open the floor. Please, you raise your hand, introduce yourself, and ask the question. So the lady in the front has been excited the entire session. تفضلي.
اوكي
تفضلي.
من ساعة أفكر بكلام لايق عشان أعبر عن سعادتي بشوفته، وشكرا أنتوا الاثنين.
But you're really here for him. Yeah.
أهلا شباب. اوكي، اللي أنت كنت تتكلم عن تبديل الأجزاء إذا كانت مشكلة عشان وقف الأمراض، وأحس إذا كان ما في أمراض معناها استمرارية للحياة. إذا كان الخلود موجود بعيداً عن الجوانب الدينية وغيرها، الحياة ما بيكون لها معنى. الأمراض شيء جميل من ناحية إذا أنت كبير، الموت شيء جميل. أنا ما أقول أحد ينتحر، أنا ما أدعم الانتحار شكراً، بس يعني هذا بيصير meaningless الحياة.
But let me rephrase the question. You talked about some of our body parts that can age or have diseases. But the question is, إذا كانت فكرة الخلود, if you can live forever, would that be something that is actually, that is what you want?
اوكي انا ديفنتلي متفق معاكي ديفنتلي وتاني مش بشجع الانتحار بس ديفنتلي الموت حاجه حلوه وديفنتلي النسيان حاجه حلوه في حاجات احنا بنفتكر ان هي مع طبعا الحياه بتاعتنا ان احنا محتاجين نبقى فاكرين كل حاجه شاطرين في الدراسه وكل هذا الكلام بس النسيان مثلا حاجه فعلا اندر ريتد وحلوه جدا وتريح الواحد وكل هذا الكلام. انا نظريتي كنت قريت كتاب ريسنتلي وعملت حلقه اسمها رحمه الموت. كتاب اسمه بينج مورتال لكاتب عظيم كتاب جميل جدا. هو كان بيتكلم على انه هو كان بينصح الاطباء ان هم يقولوا للمرضى ان انتوا عندكم فرصه ان انتوا تموتوا ولكن عندكم الفرصه ان انتوا تموتوا مرتاحين. وهو ده اللي بتكلم فيه ان هو ان انت فعلا تقدر تحصل على انه لو ما عندكش الامراض المتعبه المؤلمه كل هذا الكلام بس مش هتألم. هو ده وهو فعلا اللي احنا عايزينه كل ده ان احنا نحصل على موتة رحيمه نحصل على
حياه صحيه. It's a healthy lifestyle.
بالظبط. ف again my answer to you is that the thing I'm proposing is just I think again not advertising to suicide at all. يعني for people who have these thoughts I would highly recommend the book اللي هو بتاع الديبريشن اللي قلت عليه The Noonday Demon. بس again death is wonderful, forgetting is wonderful. Death is actually I don't want to speak about that. But anyways, I think what we just want to propose is just a good life, no pain. Diseases bring a lot of pain, and so managing to delete the diseases is what I'm aiming for. And again, it's a choice. Like as with technology, you can choose to use the internet. You can choose just to stay in the forest somewhere, wherever, and just live your life. It's your choice. But I want that choice to be available.
Thank you, Ahmed. Other questions, please. الميكروفون موجود في الصف الثالث. Please.
اسمي خالد. السؤال نوجهه للأستاذ أحمد وللبشمهندس عامر إنه لماذا البشر يسعون إلى استيطان المريخ وليش نترك كوكب الأرض؟ بمعنى إنه المريخ هو قليل الموارد وأهم مورد فيه اللي هو المياه اللي هو أصل الحياة مش موجود في المريخ. فهل حنوصل لمرحلة من استنزاف الموارد يسعوا فيها الأغنياء إنهم ممكن يعملوا سفينة زي سفينة نوح بمعنى سفينة نوح يطلعوا فيها على المريخ ويسيبوا باقي البشر في كوكب الأرض؟ لماذا السعي إلى استيطان المريخ؟
شكرا. And let me again just repeat the question for those who couldn't hear it. You talked a little bit, Amer, about resources and the concept of are we going to Mars for resources? Should resources be shipped from Mars to here, or should we take resources, or should we take care of Earth first? I think the question is along those same lines. Why are we going to Mars, and what kind of resources do we hope to benefit for when we get there?
Well, it's not a political answer. I'm not talking because I'm working at MBRC. We have a program called Mars 2117, and we hope by the year 2117 to actually have a city on Mars. Now, why we have this program? And literally, this is the reality. Today, a nation like the UAE, we have three challenges: food, water, and energy. Yes, we are happy we have oil, but that will eventually end. And we might have to end it sooner because of, let's say, climate change and so on. So, if you live in a challenging environment, like Mars, you will be able to make technological advancement that will make life on Earth even better. So today, if you don't have water or you have very short resources of water on Mars, you will know how to utilize them to live there. And then you will make that kind of technology work here on Earth. And the same goes with food. You cannot grow food in a desert and you grow it actually on Mars, then you can actually grow it here on Earth, on a desert. And the same goes with energy. So the technological advancement that we will make when we reach Mars, eventually it will help us live in a harsh environment here. And believe me or not, believe it, we live in a harsh environment on Earth. Some people can't find this bottle of water, good, healthy, drinkable water. Yes, and today what we do to actually, so today if you go an astronaut, I don't know if I should say it or not, but it's not really a bottled water like this. You actually drink recycled water from your body. So that kind of technology eventually will help us have a more suitable life here on Earth. That's the main reason why we go to Mars.
Thank you, Amer. And the benefit of time, I'm going to move to the next question. Where's my mic? وين الميكروفون واصل؟
ايوه.
Okay, next question please.
أنا اسمي عبد القادر، مهندس ومحامي. سؤالي لأحمد غندور.
لو توقف لو سمحت بس.
أوكي. تفضل. أحمد، أنا ليا عندك كتاب بس. الصوت واضح؟ واضح كده؟
صوت واضح.
أنا عندي ليك عتاب بسيط، بما إن أنت مستضاف النهارده من مركز أبو ظبي لدعم اللغة العربية واللغة العربية، وأنا أحد المهتمين باللغة العربية برضه. بالنسبة للكتاب الأخير، الكتاب بتاعك صدر بالعامية بالكامل، العامية المصرية. أنا من الناس اللي لا تحبذ النشر باللغة العامية. اللغة العامية ممكن نكتب بيها على فيسبوك، ممكن نعمل بيها محتوى، لكن نشر الكتب باللغة العامية أعتقد إن ده شيء يعني ما كانش المفروض يتم. ده السؤال الأولاني. السؤال ده اللوم مش السؤال. السؤال بقى هو أنت رايح فين؟ يعني أنا متابعك من زمان، من ساعة ما ظهرت، وعايز أعرف بعد 5 سنين أنت you keep telling people about science and which is okay, but بعد 5 سنين will you keep telling people about science or you'll be a scientist؟ يعني أنا مهتم أعرف أنت شايف نفسك فين، يعني مش السؤال التقليدي بتاع شايف نفسك فين، بس هتفضل تحكي عن العلوم لحد إمتى؟ ورايح لحد فين أنت؟
شكرا اخوي عيسى. بس على اساس ان الجميع معنا ان في ناس this session is being streamed, so I'm just sometimes translating to make sure that to those who are following us with us stream can hear the question. The question is something related to what you talked about earlier, Ahmed. And there are a group of people who create knowledge, and then there are a group of people who preserve knowledge, and then maybe another group of people who might improve on that knowledge. So where do you see yourself? You've talked a little bit about you being right now in this point of your career in terms of communicating, archiving knowledge. But the question is, do you see yourself at one point in time maybe creating knowledge, or do you want to stay in this area?
My answer to that is that it's probably going to happen later on in the future, where I pursue much more technical research in science. But currently I do plan I'll continue doing the show, at least currently. That's because I'm very excited I'm very excited again about telling people what I learned, and so I imagine I'd continue doing that for a good number of years. Now some people would critique that this won't continue, but again, The Economist still exists. I think it's probably the 1800s or the 90s. It's still around there. Again, it's a magazine. It speaks about the latest technologies. It speaks about the news. It analyzes things. So again, you can treat Dahih as a kind of a visual magazine in a sense that keeps on bringing research and findings and books.
And evolving as well.
Yes, exactly. And books keep on being published yearly, so it's always there. That's concerning the first question. The second question. The first question is, basically there was a critique to why the book is published in, colloquial, and not
classical.
Classical. Again, this is a choice made by the writer of the book, Taha Al-Mu'taz Billah, a wonderful writer from our team. He chose to make it so that it becomes very accessible to the public and for little children to be able to read it. Again, that's not my choice. It is his choice, and he wanted to reach the younger generation, and the best way to do that, he supposes, is through writing an accessible language and making me read that book to these people who are interested. إجابة على السؤالين، هو كان السؤال الأولاني هو له علاقة بالكتاب، كان نقد إن الكتاب مكتوب باللغة العامية مش مكتوب باللغة العربية الفصحى. تاني ده مش خياري، هو كان اختيار كاتب الكتاب وهو طاهر المعتز بالله. وبس، وهو كان عايز يشجع الناس ان هي تقرا، فتشجع الناس ان هي تقرا ان انت تكتب لهم حاجه اكسسبل. تاني هي دي وجهه نظره، وهو تاني طاهر حد شاطر جدا وعارف هو بيعمل ايه، فيعني هو برضو احسن واحد ممكن يجاوب على السؤال ده. السؤال التاني انا ببلان ان انا ابرسو بقى حاجه تكنيكال اكتر هوبفولي في المستقبل، بس انا بتخيل ان هو حاجه زي الدحيح ادعي ان شاء الله كل هذا الكلام ان هي تكمل ل 100 سنه ان شاء الله. بنحتفل 2117 صح كان التاريخ ان شاء الله، يعني لان هي احنا في مجلات موجوده زي مجله الايكونومست اظن 1800 حاجه، مش فاكر التاريخ، بس موجوده لان الناس بتحب تعرف ودايما يحصل جديد وتسمع الاخبار والاناليسيس وكل هذا الكلام. والكتب كل سنه بيطلع كتب عن نفس المواضيع فبراين جرين نفسه نزل ذا إليجنت يونيفرس ده فابريك اوف ذا كوزموس له مش عارف كتاب عامل ازاي حتى الكتاب بيفضلوا ينزلوا
I can tell you أحمد looking at the crowd especially الصف الأول أول ما قلت إن you'll continue doing الدحيح كلهم مستانسين they're very happy that you're going to be continuing with الدحيح but I only have 5 minutes less and there's so many questions so we might able to take 2 or 3 questions but please give them brief.
We can give to the left side please to the
microphone.
stage. Anyone from here please? Anyone at this side?
لا وراك اوكي عطى الأخت بعدين اللي وراك تفضلي.
So first of all, it's really nice to be here amongst you all. Okay, my question is not related to science, it's related to self-development and career. So what piece of advice do you give to someone who's like passionate in many things and cannot decide which career to follow in the future? That's it, thank you.
So I'm going to ask my guests in brief answers, please. Advice to someone who's trying to make up their mind about their career when there are so many choices and they can't make up their mind. Briefly.
Try the things. Pursue internships. قدمي في شغل وحاولي تجربي هنا لأن هو احنا بنسمع عن الكلام بيبقى شكله عظيم بس لما نيجي نجربه هي الفكرة في مش اللي هنحصل عليه لما نعمل كذا اللي احنا بنعمله البروسيس فأقصى أحسن طريقة عشان تحصلي على هذا البروسيس internships تجربي هنا وهنا ومجالات مختلفة وبس.
Experience. عامر شو رأيك؟
I think one thing is whatever you choose and you feel you're comfortable with it, don't change. I think you will excel. So having this back and forth will never help you. Yes, explore. I think that's good. You have to try 1, 2, 3, 4, and then when you choose something, just go ahead. Sometimes you don't see many people interested in it, but eventually, because you are so good at it, people will enjoy it.
So consistency. Okay, my next question. تفضل.
Hello, I'm a biomedical engineer, student in Khalifa University. So you said something about replacing the lung, right, with an artificial lung or like a machine, right? Replacing the lung.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So the thing is, let's talk about the level of cells, right? And the level of cells.
Level of cells?
Yeah.
Yes.
Instead of replacing the tissue, let's think first about replacing cells because you wouldn't be able to replace the tissue without replacing cells, right? In each cell we have a genome, right?
Yes.
Okay. So in the genome, still in the genome itself, there are so many things that we don't understand, even though we started 2003 to sequence the genome, right? They are like, for example, the introns. You know the introns? The introns are like, they are considered sometimes as a junk DNA or dark DNA, right, by scientists. But there's an experiment where they removed introns from yeast, which are eukaryotes, like us, right? And these yeast that they remove the introns from, they can't live in harsh conditions.
The question, please. We only have 2 minutes left.
The question is, don't you think that at this level we are very, very, very far away, maybe centuries away from replacing the lung or replacing anything in the body even?
Thank you. So Ahmed, the timeline, what are we talking about here? Decades, centuries?
I think it's actually not very far. The heart-lung machine, which was used for transferring hearts, because you had to have oxygenated blood when you transfer a heart of someone to someone else, it's already there. So you can easily make, again, the head needs from the body, I believe, and if there's a doctor, please correct me, 4 things. Oxygenated blood, glucose, mobility, and sensation. That's what I think. Now, oxygenated blood and glucose, I imagine that's easy. Mobility, I think there is a lot of progress in terms of robotics. You can, again, I think it's called Boston Dynamics. You can watch the videos. They do very cool stuff ongoing. So I think that's going to be interesting. And last but not least is sensation. I don't know where the development is that, but I do believe we're more closer to the engineering technical stuff than from the biology and medicine. That's my belief. I'm just, I'm not an expert, but thank you.
One last question and we're going to close the session. Where is my microphone?
Here, Doctor, we have one quick question, please.
Yes, آخر سؤال. تفضل طالع.
Thank you very much. You've touched about how we should create knowledge, at least in the Arab countries where we are not creating knowledge. And there is a lot of knowledge in the social media. But how we develop critical thinking, because this is the important step to create knowledge. اللي هي يعني تقديم العقل على النقل في العرب culture.
Okay. Thank you. شكرا. That's actually a great question to end on. تكلمت أحمد أنت قبل عن إن موضوع أنت when I asked what's the best discovery, you said not necessarily a discovery per se, but the thinking, the approach, how science advances. فتوقع أن يربط السؤال here مع الأخ سؤاله إنه كيف نحن for us as Arabs to create knowledge, we have to teach youth how to be analytical, critical, how to be curious, how to ask questions. يعني نحن دائما ندرب عيالنا how to answer questions when we really should be training them how to ask good questions and helping them come up with answers themselves. So how do we create that culture? And then I'll ask you. Same question.
I don't think I have also an answer to big questions like these, but imagine just encouraging people on pursuing different parts. Again, we always speak about science as science, mathematics, biology, physics, but again, there is philosophy, there is a lot of social sciences. All of that is very important. I completely disagree about people who just disregard humanities and the social sciences. I think they are very, very important, again, because there are... This is going to be a long point if I speak about it, but I will not. Don't worry. But again.
Thank you.
Yes. You'd imagine that science is very powerful. Let me tell you, it's not. Because science needs communication, it needs language. Science needs methodology, it needs philosophy, and a whole bunch of things I'm not going to discuss. So again, I do believe that teaching science and teaching humanities and social sciences is the key to reaching this level of criticality.
Thank you, Ahmed. Let me add just an interjection here. يعني نحن as an academic, we believe in multidisciplinary studies. We believe in, we used to say STEM, then we start saying STEAM with arts, and then we said STREAM with reading. I think most people do believe in the integrated knowledge and integrated sciences, and where psychology and humanities, as well as science, engineering, and mathematics work hand in hand to be able to provide solutions to the most pressing challenges of the world. I'll get your input.
I'll be very brief. I think that you said it's a very great question, because I think in the Arab region we have some traditions or some beliefs. Sometimes it doesn't have to be related to our religion. Sometimes it's just belief that blocks us from questioning. But to be honest, I have seen it. I think the different generations have been changing. We in this region are very critical people. We critique everything. I think that's good. But one thing I noticed, I have two kids, two boys and one girl.
Where are
here.
they?
Okay.
Raise your hands.
And one thing I noticed, never tell them, I've read a study. One child around the age of 5
Is this
to
also
7,
your wife?
yes,
Because
my
I
wife,
would like to manage. Did you hear about him saying how important you are in educating him about books?
And one thing is, as kids, as they grow, at the age of 5 or 6, they ask around 100 questions. And this is where you, as a father or as a parent, your role is to make them ask these questions. Keep them asking. Don't block them. And this kind of curious mind have to be preserved and grown into really a mind that is thinking, discovering.
Thank you so much for a thought-provoking discussion. I honestly couldn't tell that the time is up. We talked a lot about discovery and creating knowledge. I think the session today, no matter how brief it was, helped create that knowledge. I see so many inspiring faces in front of me. Thank you to Amer, and thank you to Ahmed, and thank you to all of my audience.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ahmed. Thank you very much.
There's a book signing happening for Ahmed. It's going to be right around the corner, so if you're a fan, I'm sure you are, please, Ahmed will be available. يعطيكم ألف عافية. Right around the corner. Thank you everyone. شكرا يا أحمد. شكرا يا عامر.